Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Let's just say, if your spouse ever gives you a book titled How to Be a Real Man, don't read it. Just start checking your Wi-Fi router for unusual connections. When she handed it to me, she didn't blink, didn't laugh, didn't even wrap it, just dropped it on the counter like a dead pigeon and walked away. It still had the bookstore receipt tucked inside, meaning it wasn't even thoughtful, just convenient. I stood there staring at it, my hand on the spine, my heart in my throat. No explanation, no "haha, gotcha." Just that blank look she gives me lately. The one where her eyes are present, but her interest isn't. That's when I knew this wasn't about a joke. This was a quiet insult, gift wrapped in psychological warfare. I didn't say anything that night. I just placed the book on her pillow and left a box beside it. Empty, light, almost poetic. She found it in the morning, looked at me, then the box. I shrugged and said, "If I'm not it, go find one." She didn't argue. That was the worst part. No defense, no denial. She just muttered, "Okay," like she was agreeing to pick up milk, then left the house wearing more makeup than usual and a top she hadn't worn in years. That was Thursday. By Monday, she'd joined a new gym, switched her ringtone, started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. She even laughed louder at her texts, but never once mentioned who they were from. 2 weeks later, I was reorganizing the hallway closet when I noticed her old gym bag, the one she used to love, the one that had Mrs. Thorne stitched on the side in gold thread from our honeymoon. It was unzipped. Inside was a receipt from a motel 5 miles away. 2 nights, king room, 1 occupant name, BJ Cutler. I don't know who that is, but I know it's not me. I stared at that receipt like it might burst into flames if I blinked too fast. 2 nights paid in cash, a room with a king-sized bed and one man's name on it. BJ Cutler. I'd never heard that name in my life. And yet, my wife's monogrammed gym bag was the one hiding this little clue to whatever life she'd been building behind my back. My hands were shaking, not from rage. No, rage would have been easier. It was something worse. This slow, burning realization that I had been outplayed in my own home, my own bed. I sat on the stairs and tried to remember the last time we'd laughed together. The last time she touched my face like I mattered. The last time we shared a secret that didn't feel like a lie. When she got home, later that evening, she smelled like citrus and guilt. She tossed her purse on the counter and didn't even look at me. I followed her, with the receipt folded in my pocket like a loaded gun. I could have pulled it out and thrown it on the table. I could have demanded answers, screamed, or at the very least whispered, "Why?" Instead, I asked, "How was your day?" She didn't even flinch, just said, "Fine." You? I wanted her to confess. I wanted her to slip up, to offer me something that made the confrontation easier. But she didn't. She poured herself a glass of wine, put her feet up, and scrolled through her phone like nothing was burning around her. So, I started Googling. Not her, him, BJJ Cutler. Turns out, he wasn't some faceless stranger. He was a guy from her high school. I found a reunion photo on her class's public Facebook page. There he was, front row, in a ridiculous leather vest and sunglasses indoors. That smug kind of smile that makes you wonder if he's ever had a deep thought in his life. I wouldn't have remembered him, even if she mentioned him, and I realized she never did. No innocent BJ messaged me out of the blue. No, guess who I ran into? Just silence, because secrets grow better in the dark. That night, while she showered, I checked her phone. I know, I shouldn't have. But if you ever find yourself standing on the edge of your own life, I promise you, curiosity will shove you forward before you're ready. There were no texts, but the browser history. She'd been searching flights to Phoenix. One way. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning an escape, and I was the last to know. She never mentioned Phoenix. Not once. Not even in passing. But there it was in her browser history. Flight search after flight search. Multiple tabs open, all leading to the same one-way route. I sat there stunned, the screen lighting up my face like a flashlight in a dark cave I didn't know I was living in. My wife wasn't just slipping away, she was planning an exit strategy like I was a bad investment. And somehow, I missed all the signs while folding her laundry and unclogging our stupid bathroom sink. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to her, eyes wide open, listening to her soft breathing while my brain screamed. Who is this woman beside me? Who is she texting every night when she rolled to the far edge of the bed? And why did she suddenly start using a lock screen after years of sharing everything? I thought about confronting her, about waking her up and saying, "Hey, where are you going? And who the hell is BJ Cutler?" But then I thought, what if she's relieved I found out? What if she's waiting for me to give her a reason to walk out guilt-free? I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. I wanted the truth, but I wasn't ready for her version of it. The next day, I took the risk. I asked her, "Have you been thinking about leaving?" My voice cracked halfway through like a kid hitting puberty all over again. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, expression unreadable, then said, "Why would you ask that?" That wasn't a no. That was a stall. She poured coffee like it was any other morning and hummed along to the radio. No argument, no conversation, just that awkward hum filling the space between two people pretending they were still married. My heart was beating so loud I barely tasted my eggs. I needed more. So I went to her car while she was in the shower. It was unlocked. Inside, I found what I didn't know I was looking for. Her old iPad wedged under the seat, still synced to her iCloud. She must have forgotten about it or didn't care. Either way, it became the window I wasn't ready to look through. Messages, photos, notes, not just from BJ, but from multiple people. But he was the main one. Their thread had its own nickname, Plan B, Kiss Mark. They joked about me, called me soft serve, talked about how he'll never see it coming, and how she earned this after years of babysitting a man-child. Every message sliced deeper than the last, but it was one voice note that shattered what little was left of my pride. In it she said, "He gave me a box and told me to go find a real man. So, I did." She laughed at the end. They both did. I closed the iPad and just sat there in the driver's seat, the same seat I vacuumed for her last week, gripping the wheel like it could hold me together. My hands were sweating, my face burning. I wasn't just betrayed, I was humiliated, and still, I hadn't said a word. The following morning, I left before sunrise. Not because I had anywhere to go, but because I couldn't stand the sight of her. Her presence made my skin crawl now. How effortlessly she could smile at me, talk to me, sleep beside me while living a double life. I parked in the grocery lot 3 blocks away and just sat there with the iPad on my lap, rereading everything. There were memes they shared at my expense, screenshots of my texts she'd mocked, even a saved draft of a breakup message she never sent. It was titled Soon, and in it, she called me safe, predictable, and passive. That last one hit hardest because she was right. I'd always avoided conflict. I let her dominate the conversations, the finances, the friends, everything. I thought being agreeable was love. Turns out, she saw it as weakness. She wanted a man who'd argue back, slam doors, leave her speechless, not a guy who cried at dog movies and brought her soup when she had cramps. She didn't want comfort. She wanted adrenaline. At lunchtime, I finally went home. Her car was gone again. But this time, I noticed something new. Her spare house key, usually hung on the rack near the door, was missing. And that's when the paranoia bloomed into something uglier. Was she giving him access? I checked the back entrance. There were faint boot marks in the mud by the garden. Size 12, maybe 13, not mine. I took photos, not that I knew what to do with them. I wasn't some detective. I was just a guy trying to confirm the sinking feeling he'd been too scared to voice aloud. Later that night, I didn't speak. I just watched her. She came home with fast food for herself only, hair tousled, cheeks flushed like she'd just come from a roller coaster. She was glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years, and when she caught me staring, she didn't even ask why. She just muttered, "What?" and went upstairs. I followed 5 minutes later. From the hallway, I saw her on FaceTime. She was lying on the bed, feet swinging, whispering into the screen with that same voice she used to use for me. But it wasn't me anymore. It hadn't been for a long time. She didn't hear me. I didn't say a word, but I started planning. She didn't hang up when I walked past the door. That's how sure she was that I wouldn't interrupt. That's how predictable I'd become in her mind. A harmless figure pacing the hallway, barely worth a glance. I stopped by the wall just out of view and listened to her voice drop into that fake sweet tone she never used on me anymore. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught phrases. "I miss the way you," followed by a giggle. "He has no clue." Then silence. The kind of silence that comes before secrets cross lines. I stood there for another minute, frozen, listening to the occasional whisper through the wall. My fingers curled into fists, nails digging into my palms. Not from anger. I didn't even have that anymore, but from shame. Shame that I had to hide in my own house to find out if my wife still had the capacity to lie. Turns out she did. She had plenty left in her. She ended the call eventually and went to bed like nothing happened. I stayed downstairs. I couldn't sleep in that room anymore. The bed felt like a prop in a play I hadn't been invited to perform in. Around 2 a.m., I checked the front door cam on my phone. A week's worth of footage all the same. Her leaving late, returning later, sometimes alone, sometimes not. There was one night she came back with someone. A tall man. Couldn't see his face clearly, but he walked ahead of her like he owned the place. She followed, laughing, looking over her shoulder as they went around the back. She never brought him inside through the front. Not once. That was my door. She didn't want to ruin the illusion. Not for me, but for herself. She wanted to pretend she was still the loyal wife at the dinner table, even while she played mistress behind the shed. I didn't even feel heartbroken anymore. I felt stupid, like a man who got mugged and then apologized to the thief for carrying cash. That morning, I packed a bag. Not because I was leaving. I wasn't ready for that, but because I wanted to see what she'd do. I left it by the door, suitcase upright, wallet and keys resting on top. When she came downstairs and saw it, her eyes widened for a fraction of a second. She masked it quickly, but I caught it. The flicker of fear. Or was it disappointment that I might actually go? "You heading somewhere?" she asked, stirring her coffee like this was any other Thursday. "Maybe," I said, watching her carefully. "Depends on what you say," without looking at me. "On whether you want me to stay." She didn't answer, just sipped her coffee and smiled. That smile told me everything. That smile, it didn't just chill me, it gutted me. It was soft, tight-lipped and deliberate, like someone who'd rehearsed her response 100 times in the mirror. A smile that didn't ask me to stay. A smile that didn't beg me to go. A smile that said, "Do whatever you want. I've already made my choice." And I realized, right there, by our kitchen island, she wasn't hiding anything anymore. She didn't have to. She believed she'd already won. I left the bag by the door all day. She didn't mention it once. Instead, she spent the afternoon on speakerphone with someone from work, then played a true crime podcast while folding her laundry like she wasn't actively murdering a marriage one day at a time. I kept waiting for her to stop pretending, to break, to say, "Okay, I've gone too far." But she didn't, and maybe she never would. That evening, when she went out again, Pilates, she called it. Even though her mat hadn't moved in a month, I followed her. It felt ridiculous. I'm not the kind of guy who tells people. I get nervous parallel parking, let alone spying. But I kept 2 cars behind, headlights off, hands shaking on the wheel. She drove 20 minutes to the edge of town, to a strip of motel that caters to people who don't want to be seen. No logos, no security, no questions. I watched her park. She didn't even look around. Just walked in confidently, phone in hand, texting someone, no doubt. I waited. My mind raced. I wasn't even sure what I'd do. Bust in? Knock on the door like some pathetic soap opera extra? But then something worse happened. Another car pulled up. A black sedan, spotless with dark windows, and out stepped a man in a tailored jacket. Not BJ Cutler, not some old high school flame. This guy looked like money, confident, clean-shaven, sharp, not a man living in her past, a man promising her a future. She ran to him, actually ran, arms open, face lit up like a kid at Christmas, and the way he kissed her, not rushed, not guilty, but slow, proud, possessive. He wasn't just a fling. He was her next chapter. And I was barely a footnote. I drove away before they even went inside. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. I drove around with no destination. The kind of driving where you don't even remember taking the turns. It felt like I was watching my life from the outside, like a ghost stuck in someone else's car. The glow of streetlights passed overhead in a blur while my mind replayed her smile over and over. Not the one she gave me, the one she gave him. That version of her didn't exist in our house anymore. I think it had been gone longer than I wanted to admit. When I finally pulled into our driveway, I sat in the car for half an hour. The house looked the same as always. Lights off, blinds closed, quiet, but it wasn't my home anymore. It was just a place I happened to live. I walked in, set my keys down, and saw her shoes by the door, the same heels she wore to the motel. She was back already, freshly showered, pretending again like nothing had happened. She called out from the bedroom, casual as ever, "Hey, you ate?" I didn't answer. I just stood in the kitchen staring at the faucet, my reflection warped in the stainless steel. That man she kissed, he had my spot, my wife, my life, and I hadn't even raised my voice. I finally walked into the bedroom. She was on her phone, scrolling like always. She looked up and gave me that same indifferent glance. "Everything okay?" she asked. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at her, really stared. She looked different now, not older, not meaner, just detached, like a person who had already moved out emotionally and was just waiting for the logistics to catch up. So, I asked her plainly, "Are you in love with him?" She paused, not because she was shocked, but because she was calculating how much to say. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said slowly, deliberately, and that was it. The final insult wasn't the cheating. It was the denial, the refusal to even acknowledge the wound she'd inflicted. That's when I knew I wasn't waiting for an apology. I was waiting for someone who didn't exist anymore. That night, while she slept peacefully, like she hadn't just burned our life to the ground, I opened my laptop and made arrangements. Not for a confrontation, not for revenge, for my exit. The next morning, I didn't slam any doors. I didn't scream or cry or demand answers I'd already found. I simply got dressed, zipped up the same suitcase I'd left by the door for days, and wrote a note on a yellow sticky pad. You don't have to fake it anymore. I placed it on the kitchen counter, next to the book she gave me, How to Be a Real Man. I smiled to myself because maybe being a real man wasn't what she thought. Maybe it was walking away, without turning into what she tried to make me feel like I lacked. I didn't even take everything, just the essentials. Laptop, a few clothes, my worn notebook, and the peace I hadn't felt in months. I didn't look back when I closed the front door, didn't wait to see if she noticed I was gone. She probably wouldn't. Not right away. That was okay. I stayed at a cheap rental outside of town. No drama, no distractions, just quiet. And you know what I learned in that silence? I hadn't lost myself. I had given myself away, little by little, just to keep her happy. And somewhere along the way, I stopped asking whether I was happy too. The healing didn't come quickly, but it came in strange places. In old friends, reaching out once they realized what happened. In late-night walks with no destination. In coffee shops where no one knew my name, and that was a relief. And eventually, it came in something more. Clarity. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to suffer. I just needed to remember who I was before I let someone else decide my worth. A month later, she texted, I didn't expect you to actually leave. I didn't reply because sometimes the loudest thing you can say is nothing at all. What do you think? If you were in his shoes, would you have confronted her or walked away like he did? Comment below with the moment in this story that shocked you the most. And don't forget, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next.